On November 6, 1983, Hawkins became more than a town. It became the intersection between our world and a mythic shadow realm. While most viewers see the Upside Down as science fiction, hidden evidence reveals it mirrors an archetype from ancient stories, a corrupted underworld frozen in time. This 18-minute investigation uncovers how Stranger Things secretly built its horrors, not from technology, but from the oldest myths in human history. What if the real threat is not monsters, but the forgotten rules we broke when we crossed that boundary? Hawkins, Indiana, is not just haunted by monsters, it is haunted by its own reflection. The Upside Down mimics every block, every street, every structure, yet everything is twisted by decay. The Byers house stands in both worlds, its familiar form overtaken by choking vines and drifting spores. The same mailbox, the same porch swing, every surface is warped, as if reality itself has rotted from within. Across town, Hawkins' lab looms over both realms. In the real world, it is a fortress of concrete and steel. In the shadow realm, the building outline remains, but the walls bleed with organic growth, and the air shimmers with floating ash. Even Hawkins' middle school is doubled, classrooms and hallways stretching in parallel, but lockers are rusted, and the gym echoes with emptiness. This site-for-site duplication is not random. The street grid of Hawkins overlays perfectly with its echo, right down to the Mirkwood forest where Will Byers first vanished. In myth, shadow realms like the Greek underworld or Celtic Tir na Nog are described as mirrors, lands that copy the living world but invert its rules. The Upside Down fits this pattern with uncanny precision. Every landmark is present, but nature and architecture are claimed by something unnatural. Vines pulse where hedges once grew. Light fixtures flicker, casting no warmth. Production designers built the Upside Down as a negative mold of Hawkins, using the same blueprints and set layouts. The effect is deliberate, a geography that feels familiar but wrong, a place where every shortcut home becomes a labyrinth. This spatial echo is more than set dressing. It positions the world as a structured realm, not a chaotic void. Like ancient otherworlds, its boundaries are fixed, its map a corrupted twin of the real. The geography of the Upside Down is the first evidence that Stranger Things draws from myth, not just science fiction. The Shadow Realm rules begin with space. Every place in Hawkins has a counterpart. Every boundary is doubled. But while the streets and houses remain, time does not move forward. The world is locked, waiting, holding its breath for the next breach. November 6th, 1983, sits at the heart of Hawkins' secret mythology, a date etched into the world, never moving forward. Every object in the Upside Down is trapped in this moment. Clocks refuse to tick, calendars never turn, and the neon colors of 1980s decor glow under a layer of dust and decay. The Byers' living room still displays the same scattered toys and tangled Christmas lights, untouched by time's usual march. Even Hopper's cabin, preserved in shadow, holds on to the same half-finished coffee and faded sheriff's badge, as if waiting for a day that will never come. This sacred moment arrests everything it touches. Henry Creel spent his boyhood in silence, drifting from room to room in a house that felt colder than the Indiana winter outside. Neighbors called him odd, but the truth ran deeper. Henry saw patterns everywhere, the crawl of spiders in the wall, the secret life behind every object. By the time he arrived at Penhurst Asylum, his mind had already turned inward. Obsessed with the hidden order he believed controlled the world, locked away from the outside, Henry's isolation only sharpened his hunger for forbidden knowledge. He studied the smallest signs, cracks in the ceiling, shadows that flickered at the edge of sight, searching for a power that would let him break free. Inside the walls of Hawkins' lab, Henry became patient one. Dr. Brenner's experiments promised understanding, but the real transformation happened in the quiet moments. Henry's journals filled with sketches of spirals, branching trees, and cryptic equations. He was not content to be studied. He wanted mastery.
What began as curiosity twisted into obsession. He pushed his abilities further, testing the limits of his mind until the world itself seemed to bend. The more he learned, the more he withdrew, convinced that only he could see the truth beneath reality's surface. This path mirrors the oldest tales of myth. Prometheus, punished for stealing fire from the gods, and Faust, who traded his soul for knowledge, both crossed boundaries meant to protect mortals from powers they could not control. Henry's story fits the same pattern. His search for hidden truths led not to enlightenment, but to ruin. When he finally unleashed his full strength, the result was carnage, order shattered, and his own body marked by wounds that never healed. The scars across his arms and face, painstakingly recreated in hours of makeup each filming day, became a map of his corruption, physical proof of the price paid for trespassing where no human should. By the time Henry became Vecna, he was no longer simply a villain. He embodied the archetype of the fallen sorcerer, once human, now transformed by the very knowledge he sought. He had glimpsed the hidden machinery of the world and found it wanting. But like every mythic seer who overreaches, his power came at the cost of his soul. The echoes of Prometheus and Faust linger in every frame, the solitary figure, the forbidden act, and the punishment that endures beyond death.
Inside Hawkins' lab, the pursuit of psychic power was never gentle. Dr. Martin Brenner, called Papa by his subjects, ran experiments that blurred science and ritual. Children like 11 were placed in sensory deprivation tanks, their heads wired, and their bodies submerged in icy water. The goal was simple: reach across the barrier and touch what should remain hidden. Every attempt left a mark. Blood trickled from noses, ears rang with static, and exhaustion settled in like a fever. 11's nosebleeds became a signature, visible proof of the toll each psychic breach exacted. Even brief contact with the Upside Down drained her, leaving her curled and shivering on the linoleum floor. The myth of forbidden knowledge runs deep, and ancient stories tell similar prices. In those tales, mortals who stole fire from the gods or glimpsed the secrets of fate paid in flesh and sanity. At Hawkins' lab, the price was migraines, seizures, and weeks spent unable to walk. The children's powers did not grow without cost. Season after season, 11's strength faded after each ordeal. By the end of the third summer, her abilities vanished entirely, her body refusing to answer the call. The writers made the lesson explicit. Power is not a gift, but a debt, and the world demands payment. Brenner's methodology was clinical, but the consequences were cosmic. Psychic overreach did not just wound the children, it fractured the world itself. Each experiment risked opening gates and letting the outside in. The more the lab pushed, the more unstable Hawkins became. The Upside Down responded like a wounded animal, lashing out with monsters and storms. The boundary between realms weakened not by accident, but by human design. In myth, mortals who reach too far often bring disaster home. The Hawkins lab trials echo those warnings, showing that stolen insight can never be contained. Every nosebleed, every blackout, every shivering child in the tank is a reminder. The price of forbidden power is paid in blood, and sometimes in the fabric of reality itself. The Mind Flayer does not stalk Hawkins as a villain with a face. Its presence seeps through the world like rot in the walls, an invasion that is less a plan than a process. Beneath the streets, black tunnels snake outward, pulsing with spores and slick with living matter. These are not simple passageways, but arteries of a spreading infection. In Season 2, Will Byers becomes a living conduit for this force, his body racked by visions as the Mind Flayer's tunnels multiply beneath the town. The network grows on its own, splitting and branching, as if Hawkins is being digested from below. This is not the work of a single monster, but of a system. Rats vanish from basements and reappear as fused, twitching masses in the Starcourt Mall. Human bodies, stripped of will, are drawn into the biomass, melting, merging, and rebuilding into something new. In the food court, a tower of flesh and bone rises, fed by the flayed remains of neighbors and friends. The Mind Flayer's reach is ecological, not personal. It spreads entropy, breaking down the boundaries that keep Hawkins whole. The show's designers built these sequences to evoke a living disaster. Tunnels and biomass were modeled on fungal networks and slime molds, not traditional monsters. Practical effects layered silicone and latex over real sets, while digital vines crawled up support beams and burst through walls. Every new growth is automatic. Demogorgons hatch from sacs in the tunnels, their birth a matter of biology, not malice. Bats swarm out of cracks in the ground, acting not as predators, but as extensions of the realm's immune system. Writers describe the Mind Flayer as a force of nature, an eldritch storm that consumes order. Its intent is not revenge or conquest, but expansion. Like the Norse Nidhogg gnawing at the roots of the world tree, or the Greek chaos swallowing light, the Mind Flayer undoes structure wherever it finds it. No amount of brute force can stop it. Burning a nest only scatters spores. Closing a gate leaves tunnels behind. The conflict is not a battle against a single enemy, but a struggle against a living entropy that remakes the world in its own image. Hawkins, Indiana, sits on more than just farmland and forest. In folklore, places where the world grows thin, where reality's fabric weakens, become gathering points for the strange. Hawkins fits this pattern with uncanny accuracy. Every major breach, every psychic disturbance, clusters around familiar sites: the woods at Mirkwood, the limestone quarry, the corridors of Hawkins' lab. These are not random locations. In Celtic and Norse traditions, forests and deep waters serve as portals, thresholds where people vanish or return changed. The show's incident map tells the same story. Will Byers disappears near the woods, Barb vanishes at the pool's edge, and the quarry hosts whispers of lost children long before the Upside Down claims its first victim. Expert folklorist Simon Bronner describes such thin places as persistent loci, geographic magnets for the uncanny, where the barrier between worlds is naturally weaker. In Hawkins, the pattern repeats. Gates open at the lab, but also at the quarry's rim and the tangled woods where the party first glimpses the Demogorgon. Even the Starcourt Mall, built atop a network of tunnels, becomes a new breach point and echoes older myths where new settlements disturb ancient boundaries. Urban legends in the real-world filming locations, Atlanta's Lithia Springs Quarry, for example, report a spike in ghost sightings and upside-down tours since the show's debut, blurring fiction and local myth. The clustering of supernatural events around these sites roots Stranger Things in a tradition older than the town itself. Hawkins is not just a backdrop, it is a map of mythic pressure points, each breach reinforcing the logic that some places are destined to be crossroads. The story's stakes are always local, bound to the geography that shapes every cycle of sealing and return. Every attempt to close the breach in Hawkins follows a pattern older than the town itself. In myth, evil is rarely destroyed outright. It is sealed, locked away, or forced into slumber, but always with a price. Stranger Things returns to this cycle again and again. The first gate, torn open the night Will Byers vanished, is only closed when Eleven vanishes herself, consumed by the effort. A year later, another rift blooms under Hawkins' lab, and it takes the combined strength of the group, including the sacrifice of Bob Newby, who dies unlocking the doors, to force it shut. Each victory is paid for in blood or loss. Hopper is presumed dead in the Starcourt explosion. Billy Hargrove gives his life to shield Eleven. Eddie Munson lures the bats with his guitar and does not return. Even Max Mayfield, left in a coma after facing Vecna, becomes another name in the ledger. These are not random casualties. The show's creators draw on the logic of mythic sealing rites. The act of closing a portal demands more than power. It requires an offering. In Celtic and Greek stories, the barrier between worlds is only restored through sacrifice, whether that means a hero's life or the memory of the fallen. Hawkins mirrors this tradition, its wounds reopening with each new breach, the cycle unbroken. Folklorist Simon Bronner puts it simply: in ritual, the sealing of evil is never permanent. The community must pay again and again to keep the darkness at bay. As the cycle repeats, the geography of Hawkins becomes a map of loss. Each gate, each grave, a reminder that the rules of myth demand both courage and cost. Even as new episodes unfold, the true power of these stories lies in how ancient fears shape modern worlds. In a culture obsessed with logic, Stranger Things reminds us that myth still explains what science cannot touch. It explains our dread of the unknown. Today, as reality blurs with fantasy, the boundary between worlds feels thinner than ever. Sometimes, what haunts us most is not a monster, but a story we are still living. Share your thoughts below.